Today we're talking about something that destroys marriages faster than almost anything else: aggression. And by aggression, we're not talking about passion, not disagreements, not frustration. Aggression. Physical or verbal behavior meant to harm, intimidate, threaten, or dominate your spouse. And before you think I'm talking only to men, let me tell you a personal story. Previously, I shared on this podcast that my husband, who is from Nigeria, and I became engaged within 12 days and married a few months later. But I didn't share some of the challenges surrounding that story. By 2009, my husband had made it through the immigration process and was now living in the United States with our daughter and me. He was working and putting himself through school. And during this time, there was a lot of conversation about foreign-born spouses marrying for green cards. It was everywhere. When people learned you had a foreign-born fiance or spouse, eyes would roll and people would say, "Girl, be careful." And this was even more true if a woman had unconventional beauty, if she was older, heavier like me, or not considered attractive by Western standards. The gossip was cruel. On the blogs, people would say things like, "He must be really desperate for that green card to marry her." Many of us going through the immigration process were also on visa forums and apps where people shared their experiences. And unfortunately, some of those horror stories actually happened. So during this time, after my husband received his 2-year conditional green card, which begins the path towards citizenship, I found myself reading more and more of these stories. And slowly, insecurity began creeping into my mind. My husband was now working full-time and going to school. He was busy. He was on the phone with classmates discussing assignments, and he regularly spoke with friends and relatives back home in his native language, which I didn't understand. And instantly, I would feel dread. I was easily triggered emotionally when I felt I was losing control, especially control over what might happen next. Now, if you've ever had the privilege of meeting my husband, you know he is one of the most gentle giants you'll ever meet. Everyone says that about him. He's calm, thoughtful, patient, and those qualities never changed as we transitioned into married life. But I was becoming increasingly fearful that I might become that woman whose husband used her for convenience, only to later fall in love with someone else or go back home and marry someone from his culture once he had citizenship. One day, I picked my husband up from school and saw him speaking with a female Nigerian student, and every insecurity bubbled to the surface. I lost it. When we got home, I followed him into the room and aggressively got in his face, berating him, accusing him, poking, secretly hoping he would reassure me to calm the storm raging inside of me. Instead, he looked confused and shocked that I was behaving that way. And that only made me escalate further, because the reassurance I wanted wasn't coming. And the truth is, even if it had, I probably wouldn't have believed it, because deep down, I didn't feel lovable enough or beautiful enough to believe that I was his happily ever after. So I escalated further, yelling at the top of my lungs. And his response? He simply refused to engage, didn't even look in my direction. And somehow, in my mind, that convinced me I had something to fear for real. Then I did something that no one in a relationship is entitled to do. I hauled off and hit him, bam, right in the chest. My husband calmly stood up, and I remember thinking, oh snap, what did I just do? Mr. Emegha is about to tear me up. Instead, he calmly grabbed his coat and walked out the door. He left everything, his clothes, the car. He didn't even take food. And at that time, we didn't have much money, so I knew he didn't eat. In that moment, I also knew I had crossed every boundary, and I seriously thought I had lost my husband. Now, truthfully, it took years for me to trust fully that I was not merely a convenience. But I knew one thing in that very moment. My husband had never treated me in a way that justified what I had done, which meant it was my issue to fix. And after hours of not hearing from him, I knew something else, that if that ever happened again, I would lose him. And in 20 years of marriage, it has never happened again. In fact, in 20 years of marriage, we have only had a handful of disagreements that even rose to the level of arguments. So when I say aggression has no place in marriage, I'm not speaking hypothetically. I'm speaking from experience, from understanding both the origin of aggression and its impact on both the aggressor and the person receiving it. Now let's dig in deeper.